guest speakers. We have Dr. Silva here with us and Zena. And so Dr. Silva is a recent graduate of the Boonshoft School of Medicine at Wright State University. She joined AMSA as president of the Boonshoft Institutional Chapter in 2020 and helped lead an ambitious revamping of the chapter that ultimately resulted in it becoming the most active chapter in the organization. Simultaneously, as vice chair, Dr. Silva helped with the founding of the Young and Empowered Women, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for gender equity and supporting early career women with professional and personal development. She is excited to take her leadership from the AMSA and the Y&E to the national level to continue developing the generation of AMSA changemakers. Zena is a recent graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences and the Judy Genshaft Honor Society at the University of South Florida, earning a degree in biomedical sciences. Zena briefly served as the AMSA Medical Education Advocacy Coordinator before transitioning into the role of the pre-medical trustee. She is currently working as a part-time research assistant in basic clinical sciences and malignant hematology at Moffitt Cancer Center as she prepares to apply for medical school.
Awesome. Is that my cue to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here, and thank you so much to PreMed CC for inviting us to talk. We're super excited to chat with you, and hopefully give you a little bit of insight into our organization to learn a little bit more about AMSA and help you along your path to medical school. So is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen? Okay, let me go ahead and do this. And then let's see, present. Let's see. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, awesome. So super excited to talk to you about AMSA, the American Medical Student Association. So what we'll talk about a little bit today is a little bit about what we are, what's in it for you as a pre-med student, and also to highlight a huge event that we are super excited to share with you. And through that, alongside, and Zena will type in and talk a little bit more about how does this all apply to pre-meds. So diving a little bit into what is AMSA? What is this thing that we're talking about here? So we are the oldest and the largest independent medical student association designed for future physicians. We've been around, this is our 75th year, and we've been working since then to make the world a better place through medicine with people like you. How do we do that? We kind of focus in three main areas. So one, in education, because we recognize sometimes that, oftentimes when you think of medical school, you're thinking, oh, the science and the medicine and all of that. But there's so much more to being a physician than just the content. We also are super passionate about advocacy. And the reason for that is that a lot of times it's really easy to overlook students and overlook the student voice. And so we are really excited to be able to bring that student voice to the larger stage in a lot of different spaces. And then also a whole bunch of different supports with you in partnership with groups like PreMed CC. So how do we do all of that? So some of the really exciting things that we have available within AMSA is that one of the things we kind of talked about, I talked a little bit about these kind of key issues that we don't usually talk about. So right now we have our education arm is called our AMSA Academy. And you're like, okay, but I'm already in school. Why do I need more school? Well, we have really cool courses, things like talking about global health, things talking like racism in medicine, things like reproductive health, humanities in the arts, transgender health. So there's a lot of different scholars programs that we have available to all of you through AMSA that we're able to share. We also have a very specific leadership development course that's actually included in an AMSA membership that's accessible at any time for you to learn how do you take your leadership to the next skill. Super cool. Along with all of that, we also have a whole bunch of personal and professional development opportunities. We have a whole bunch of partners with various different test prep organizations, various different CVs. How do you prepare for exams? So there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can help you develop not only as a future physician, but also as a person. In terms of our advocacy, we do a lot of different things in a lot of different spaces. So whether that means going literally up to Capitol Hill and talking with lawmakers about how do we move forward and advocate for what we need and what our patients need, or moving and learning about what is grassroots organizing? How do you start, talking about legislation and how that all carries out? So things that are really, really cool that we're able to do ends up moving things forward. And we'll get into a little bit more about what AMSA's history has done within advocacy, because you're like, maybe I've never advocated before, or you're like, maybe I'm old hat, either which way. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, you've got within AMSA a whole bunch of cool people, cool alumni, a whole bunch of mentorship programs. Actually, we have an entire pre-med mentorship program that is just for all of you. So there's a lot of different support networks as well within AMSA, because we've got over 30,000 members and over 350 alum who are mostly physicians. So we've got a lot of people at the beck and call. So to kind of dive into our numbers here a little bit more. So I talked about those 350 alumni. We talked about how long we've been around, but we also are not just in the US, we're actually across the world as well. So you have an international scope and support system as well, which is really, so here are a couple of our really key AMSA alumni. Some of these people you might be aware of, who are just super rock stars in the AMSA universe, but also in the medicine universe. And we've had a long history of basically you'll find AMSA alumni in the top places of medicine all over the country and all over the world, which is really, really cool. We have people in the White House. We have people who are running all of the major special societies. There's a lot of AMSA which is really, really exciting to be a part of that legacy. One of the things, I love this quote by Dr. Leanna Wen, who is one of our alumni. And I think that's one of the biggest things we love about AMSA is that like you can be a future physician and everybody has their own journey to medicine. I know for me, I definitely have my own reason for why I want to dedicate my life to this field. And I think that's something at AMSA that we understand. It's that you don't just want to be a physician. You don't just want to go out there, do the thing, keep pushing. Maybe you do. But what happens with AMSA is that we're like, okay, but we have this opportunity to be even more, to recognize that your patients are more than just what you see in the clinic or in the exam room, but that they have a whole community around, in a whole, family and all of these different pieces. And so at AMSA, we get to talk about all of that and really do something. So kind of talking into, okay, so this sounds cool, maybe, but like, why should you be a part of all of it? So what makes AMSA really unique as opposed to a lot of other spaces is that we do get to be unapologetic. We actually are completely student run. So I know I have the MD after my name, but I literally just graduated school like a couple months ago. And our president next year is actually going to be in between their second and third year of medical school. So our whole board of trustees, and we'll introduce you to some of us in a second, are all medical students or pre-meds as well. And so we have a lot of kind of different pieces going for AMSA that is really, really exciting. And so as a member and being a part of it, you get to do all of these different things. And we have a really, really awesome, especially for our pre-meds, we have a lot of support in terms of how do we help you get to the next stage in medical school? And then also, how do you really start thinking about what kind of physician do you want to be once you're there? So AMSA in and of itself. So it is, so right now you see the screen, that's the money, and people like because we want to care about money, it's one thing, but what we will share at the end is that we actually, because you all are here today, we're happy to give you a little discount. So being able to kind of key into it, but yes, you can see you've got $75 for 4 years and you get all of this, which is crazy. So the value in it is a lot, and you get to have this all 4 years. So this is kind of the programming piece of things. Then we also have partners in all of these different groups. So if you're like, hey, like, I don't, if you are buying scrubs and those kinds of things. We have a partnership with Figs, which is super exciting. A lot of these other kind of study pieces, these are just kind of a little bit of a intro into the deals, but we've also got things where it's like, do you want travel discounts and hotel discounts and rental cars and um, theme parks? So we actually have like discounts for all of these things too, which is also fun. I mean, again, we've got all of this, but we also have all of this, which is also super fun. One of the things I'd be remiss not to talk about is we have also a lot of really cool grant funded projects, one of them being our reproductive health project. And so if you're somebody who's really interested, I know if you're somebody who's like, I saw the Dobbs decision and I am really, really invested in this kind of work and that's super, super pertinent to me, we have a really robust reproductive health project that lets you talk from an education perspective. It lets you talk through actual trainings and education and those kinds of pieces. And so please go ahead and take a moment to scan that QR code if that's something that you want to learn more about. Our Repro Health team is phenomenal. And it's a really cool thing that AMSA does that nobody else really has that is doing in terms of like medical student space at the moment. And it's not, this is education that doesn't actually always happen in medical schools. So this is really, really cool that we get to do. What we also have is opportunities for research and publications. I know medical schools really care about research and publications, so do residencies. And so what we have within our AMSA membership is a research and professional development directory that keys you and gives AMSA members the opportunity to apply and get involved with different research projects across the country, but also like different internships and fellowships and those kinds of things. And so we are working to launch that. Actually, secret, if you guys look on the website, it's actually kind of secretly already soft launch. So like this is just, I'm just telling you because you all like get to know that now. So that's just something that you can key into, but there's going to be more coming in that's really exciting. And also if you are doing research. We'll talk about our convention a little bit later, but our poster session is live. And so if you're looking for somewhere to present and submit your abstracts to, we have a place for you to do that and get you published and all of that, which is also super fun. All right. We talked about scholars programs. These are our fall courses. So we are just in the swing of them, but we're going to be having our winter courses too. So just talking a little bit more about that. And I know that we have a pre-med scholars program in the winter as well. So that might be something to really look into and look online to kind of find and register for that, which is super exciting as well. This is a little bit of an outdated slide, but some sort of examples of what we do in terms of our events at AMSA. So not actually, yeah, last week was National Primary Care Week. And so we actually had a whole bunch of different events across the country designed for National Primary Care Week, which was incredible. And they did a fantastic job. These are some of the events that we had in October in terms of what we were hosting. And this is just kind of a snapshot to give you guys a little bit of an idea of some of the events that we have. And this is on the national level. We also have chapter events that are going on per school as well from that perspective as well. So now I'm actually going to pause here really quickly before we talk about FP4C. I'm going to turn it over to Zena to talk a little bit more about the pre-med space and a little bit more about, okay, this is really cool. Maybe I should join, but also what if I wanted to start a chapter? What if I wanted to learn a little bit more about being a pre-med and how do I navigate that space? So Zena, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Annelise. Yeah, so I'm a pre-med student myself, as you guys heard. Thank you for the introduction, Edith. And AMSA has a huge pre-medical student body. We do a lot of programming specifically for pre-medical students, supporting them in their journey to applying to medical school. And a lot of AMSA's opportunities go for both medical students and pre-medical students. So we're always trying to make sure that we represent everyone. So Annalise mentioned about starting a chapter at your school. We do have a lot of chapters already at school. So if you don't know that whether you have a chapter at your school, there's a few easy ways you can check. One is to go through your university or college itself. You can do this by contacting your school's club or organization body. Usually it's like student life or student affairs, and you can see whether you already have an active chapter at your school. Another way, and I think this one is a bit easier for most people, is that if you have social media, a lot of AMSA chapters will have a social media page, so you can look for one from your university. And you can also email me, and I will be happy to help you look for one if you're not sure, or maybe your chapter is inactive. But if your school doesn't have an AMSA chapter, it's really easy to get one started, and there's only a few requirements to do so. The first thing you need to do is have 5 active national AMSA members, which is pretty easy. You and 4 other friends. And you can join through AMSA's website. It's really easy. You just click the join button and follow the steps. There's a 4-year membership or a 1-year membership for pre-medical students. Most people choose the 4-year because they're in college, so in their 4 years. But even if you're in your gap year, you can still choose to do the 4-year membership. And when you join as a member for AMSA, you also get a gift from Kaplan. So Annelise mentioned some of the benefits and discounts that we get. So Kaplan will actually provide a free course gift, and you get it a few weeks after signing up. So that's already one bonus, and that's just from signing up. And there's countless other ones as well that Annelise mentioned. And then the next part is that you need to decide on chapter officers. When you're starting a chapter, you need at least 2, one of them being the president. I believe the other positions are like a financial officer, an advocacy officer, and a membership officer. But your chapter can ultimately customize what these positions would look like for your chapter. The only thing you need to do is submit those nationally recognized chapters through our chapter officer request form. And then another incentive for becoming a chapter officer, besides the amazing leadership opportunity and becoming involved in AMSA, is that we offer a 50% off Kaplan MCAT preparation courses to those officers that you submit to us. Whereas our normal members still do get that discount, which is I think 20%. So either way, you're still getting a discount, but everyone wants free stuff. So there you go. Another part is that we recommend that you have a college and should be someone that will support chapters, goals, or missions. They actually don't have to be part of your college, just could be sorry, I'm freezing up. Okay, can you guys still hear me? Okay,
We can
sorry.
hear you. But you might want to
It's just
repeat
really
what
important because
Zena, you might want to repeat what you were saying that they should have.
Oh, yeah. So from the chapter officers, you should have at least 2. I kind of talked about that. Hopefully you guys heard me in the MCAT discounts. And then it's also highly recommended that you have a faculty advisor. And this is because chapter officers and students eventually graduate, and you want to have that continuity between new e-boards and elections. So faculty advisors can like serve as a point of historical knowledge and current knowledge, and they're just there to support your chapter. And you have pretty much you're flexible in choosing who you want to serve as your faculty advisor. After choosing those, the next step would be to fill out our charter and bylaws. These are available on the AMSA website, and I'll drop the links in the chat after I give the whole spiel. But basically, we already have templates that you can fill out to get started. So it's really easy. It's all you have to do is choose whether you charge local dues. Do note that the national due for membership is fixed, but your chapter can decide whether you want to charge local dues. And just basically, you're agreeing to follow our constitution and bylaws, as well as our preambles, purposes, and principles, which are our governing documents on the national level. And again, chapters have a lot of flexibility as how they want to run their local level and their individual programming and focus. The only thing that we really are concerned about on the national level is that you're in compliance with our documents and that you're doing work that supports both pre-medical students or medical students if you're a medical chapter. And then after you have all this, all you have to do is submit it to us and submit your chapter officers through our chapter requests form, and we'll review them and approve them. And you just update your officers whenever you elect new individuals so that we can keep track of them and make sure that we know who to contact to get in contact with your chapter. And our turnaround time for approving chapters is usually pretty short, I'd say within a few weeks. And we're always here to help you throughout the entire process. All of these steps are outlined on our website. But again, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me or anyone from our membership team. One cool thing is after you get approved as a chapter, you can request recruitment kits. So we'll send some AMSA goodies to you and your chapter to make sure that you can get some members engaged with your new chapter. Because again, you might be starting off pretty small, maybe with just those 5 required members, but we want you to grow as much as possible. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the basics for getting started. Other than that, I mean, as a pre-medical student, it's a great leadership opportunity to become a chapter officer or even just a member because you get access to so many resources that are essentially requirements for medical school between volunteering, research, clinical experience, and all that. It's a great way to have something where it puts everything for you in one place. And Annalise sort of talked about this mentorship aspect in that AMSA is full of pre-medical medical students, physicians, everyone who wants to make medicine a better place. So it's nice to meet a lot of the like-minded people. And then the one last thing I guess I'll highlight while we're here is that we actually have our pre-medical research project going on right now. This is headed by our current pre-medical membership director, and she was actually the previous pre-medical trustee. Her name is Tyra Lee Brett. This is an IRB approved survey that is going through the University of Vermont, and it's basically assessing disparities to applying to medical school at both universities and community colleges. And it focuses specifically on underrepresented minorities, specifically barriers to those resources that I was talking about, which AMSA tries to provide as best as it can. And it's really easy to complete. All you have to do is review the student information sheet because it is an IRB approved survey, and then you take the 5-minute survey. And I think the only requirements are that you have to be 18 years old and a pre-medical student, which I believe most of us are. And I believe the deadline has been extended to December 1st. So it would be really great for you guys to do that. And maybe it's another way for you to get involved through AMSA. And back to Annalise.
Awesome. Thanks, Zena. So yeah, a lot of really awesome opportunities. If you want to join AMSA, you can absolutely do that. But then if you're like, I want to take this to the next level, bring it to my school, and share that, that's also another awesome leadership opportunity. I will also say, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you are interested in starting a chapter, reach out to me and I'll make sure I put my email in the chat as well. But if you want to reach out to me individually, I might be able to swing a significant discount for you on your AMSA membership if you want to help start a chapter. And when I say significant, I might mean free. So that's a shameless plug to reach out to me if you're interested in looking at starting a chapter. However, if you're not, and that's also totally fine, we also have we'll give you guys the discount codes at the end as well to join as well. Cool. So, one of the things that I'm super, super excited to tell you all about is our huge annual conference. And so it's called Future Physicians for Change. It is the place to be. It is the coolest and the best conference as well. So let's talk a little bit more about it. So it's going to be next April in Washington, D.C. And you can kind of scan the QR code. And let me talk a little bit more about so if you've never been to a conference before, having your old hat, it's a really cool opportunity where you get to be able to network, learn a little bit more, do things outside of your school and be able to really engage in a really different way. And so the way that our conference works is actually starts the very first day is advocacy focus. And so what we do is we go right up to Capitol Hill. We have, so you'll be able to get into a group with the lawmakers in your state and go to their offices literally on Capitol Hill and talk to them a little bit about our advocacy priorities. So our 3 advocacy priorities this year is in the DEI space, another space in terms of reproductive health, and then also the physician shortage. As you guys are probably aware that there's a looming physician shortage, especially in primary care. So that's why we need all of you in medicine, which is super exciting. But we get to do that and then be on Capitol Hill. And then at the very end of the day, if you're an AMSA member, we actually have our elections that night, which is also super exciting. So you get to not only advocate for things about what's going on in your country, but then you actually get to make changes in AMSA right after. The next day is really kind of geared to a lot of really cool sessions. So Zena mentioned our partnership with Kaplan. They do a whole pre-med how to get into medical school session, which is really cool. We also have really interesting and phenomenal speakers who are talking about everything from medical education to wellness and all of those different pieces. You'll also see in the top left corner, we also have a whole bunch of clinical skills that come in. So that person's probably doing a fast ultrasound exam on a simulated trauma patient, which is cool, so that you get to kind of learn how to do that if that's not something you've ever done before, which is really cool. We also have a sim team challenge. So if you want to learn how to be a doctor and experience what that looks like, you can put together a whole team. We have a pre-med simulation challenge, and basically you and your team will be presented a patient, and you guys will have the opportunity to try to learn what's going on with your patient, diagnose them, figure out a treatment, all of those types of things, and just experience what it's like to be a doctor for a second there. So that's also a lot of fun. The next kind of day, I talked a little bit about our poster session. So if you've been to a conference before, you're probably more familiar with poster sessions, but this is a chance for you to learn how to present your research. I like to describe it as like adult science fair. If you remember doing science fair and like, as a kid, it's kind of like that, except a lot more fun. And so you have that opportunity to share the work that you're doing in that way, and be able to kind of look at other people and the other kind of work that they're doing, build networking in those pieces. So there's a lot of really, really cool things that happen at Future Physicians for Change. And so we highly, highly recommend you guys to come over there. Also, if any of you guys, I know that we were talking a little bit more about community college space, but if any of you are involved with PTK, we actually have a partnership with PTK that we are able to, and I can give you guys more information afterwards, but we're able to give a like full ride scholarship to Future Physicians for Change if you are applying through that. So if anybody's a PTK person, touch base with us and we can tell you a little bit more about that opportunity. So this is really, really exciting. We really would love to have you. This, again, is the email list to get to our membership team. Bazina also dropped her information in the chat. One of the things that's also kind of cool, if you're interested in a chapter, what we can also do is do something called an institutional partnership. And the institutional partnership is really cool, where we partner with your whole school. And for a certain number of students, we work with your school to give free AMSA membership for you all to your classmates and that kind of thing. So you and your classmates. And so it's a really cool opportunity for you to, if you want, you could start a chapter, but if you wanted to work with us, and we can help work with your school and the people who talk and do all of that, that we can end up getting like free membership for you all. And the way that those institutional partners basically work is that we can customize it to build that learning for whichever. So if you're like, hey, I have a school and they're probably really interested in this, maybe you're really close with your pre-med advisor. So for example, we have one of our strongest IPs is Hillsborough Community College in Florida. And so they do really, really awesome work, and we're able to give their membership free, their school free membership. So if that's something that you're thinking, hey, like this could be actually really, really cool, that's a whole other level of leadership that you can explore. And we'd be happy to work with you guys to figure out how we can make you all an institutional partner. I will also say my medical school was an institutional partner for AMSA, which was really, really cool, because then for like residency applications, so I'm currently applying for residency right now. And so it was really cool to be able to have access to all of those opportunities as a medical student, but able to share that with all of my other classmates, because my school wasn't a top like 25 school or anything like that. Fantastic, fantastic school, but doesn't have that kind of same name recognition as a top 25 school. So having these opportunities helped take my whole class to the next level. So that was really, really cool. So if you think that this could be a really interesting IP situation, these are the kind of different pieces we'd love for you to think about. And then please feel free to contact down below here. These are our membership staff team members, Amelia and Maria. They are absolutely phenomenal. But if you forget their emails, you can also just reach out to Zena and I, and we will be able to work with you as well. Cool. So I wanted to also take a quick second to introduce you to some of the board of trustees. And so I mentioned the AMSA's run by students, and this is our student team. So we have our board of trustees run our whole actual student governance. So there's actually another like 50 or so people that we oversee as well on the national team. That's broken up into all of these different categories. Here's our illustrious Zena over here as well. But what's also kind of cool, and what we didn't actually touch base on, is we have action committees as well. So if you're a member of AMSA, you can also join one of our action committees at the national level. And so we have that opportunity to get involved with things like global health, gender and sexuality, medical education. So we have actually a whole bunch of different action committees you can get involved with as well.
I have a question. How do you become a leader in
Yeah.
AMSA?
Good question. How do you become a leader in AMSA? So a lot of times you have to become an AMSA member first. So you have to become an AMSA member first. And then what oftentimes our leaders, our national leaders, are often leaders at their chapter level first. So either they've started a chapter or they become part of the like executive board at their local chapter, which is actually what I did. I was president of my local chapter. And so then what we have then is the opportunity, every AMSA member has the opportunity to run for national office, and national office, either our board of trustees or our action committees. So there's a lot of positions that are always open in those kinds of spaces. And so our elections happen actually, like I was saying, at our convention this year. And so if that's something that you're like, I really want to learn more about leadership, I want to learn more about getting involved at AMSA national level, please come and talk to us. We'd love to have you and love to chat more with you about what that looks like. We have so many different kinds of positions that you can find on our website and learn a little bit more. And also, if you find a position that you're like, I would love to learn more about that, reach out to us and we'd be happy to connect you with the person who's in that position to give you a little bit more information. So it's really, really cool. The way that elections work is that we actually have each of our chapters has a delegate to what we call our House of Delegates, which is pretty much like our Congress, so to speak. And so those elections, you get elected by your peers from the delegates of all the AMSA chapters, and it's a really cool and a lot of fun. So definitely, if you're interested in getting involved on the national level, come talk to us. We'd love to have you on our team. Good question.
Do you need to
Thanks.
have some special powers to become a leader?
You have to be special powers, maybe a cool heart, creative mind, passion for medicine, and a lot of excitement and a lot of energy is kind of usually what we're looking for. So I can talk a little bit more about the actual kind of like application process. So typically, if you want to run for office, it depends on what kind of level. So you've got the action committee or the membership director level, and then you also have the board of trustees level. And so some of our board of trustees, so for example, we already have our elect position. So Nikita Balaji is our president-elect. So they will be president next year, but we will be looking for a president-elect at some point as well. And so we also have like our vice president-elect and those kinds of pieces. I will make the caveat that usually the board of trustees end up usually being mostly medical students, just because we end up needing that level to have the breadth of experience of medical education so that they can be able to advocate for medical education. So it's a little bit hard to advocate for medical education as a pre-med because you haven't been in medical school quite yet, but we do have Zena. And so Zena is our kind of pre-med holdout on our team. Zena, however, is in her position for 2 years. That position will not be open next year, but there's actually plenty of pre-med positions. All of our action committees, all of our membership directors, they have a whole bunch of pre-med representation. There's no kind of expectation for like level once you're in the other kind of spaces. So that's a way to get involved in that kind of space. And it actually also ends up being a good space. Most of our board of trustees were a membership director or an action committee leader before coming into the board. So for example, actually Rico, our vice president for membership elect, he's been in AMSA for like 11 years, like since his pre-med time. And so he kind of went all the way up the ranks, and now he's vice president for membership elect. I know he is interested in becoming president one day, so that could be you. Maybe our future president is in this room right now, which is super cool. This we don't need to talk about quite yet because that was our House of Delegates. But once you're a member, we'll give you more information about what the House of Delegates looks like. But we're on social media, so come follow us, learn what we're doing at all times in those pieces. We'd love to kind of hear from you in that piece of things. So I've been talking a whole bunch. And hopefully you guys are finding this helpful. Yes. So actually, and thank you so much. So one of the things for our action committees on AMSA, our environmental health action committee is actually not running right now. So you will see that. But if you're interested in environmental health and you want to get involved and you want to think about that action committee, let us know, because actually, candidly, we didn't have a lot of interest in environmental health last year. So that's why it doesn't exist. So if you are interested and you're like, hey, I want to revive the Environmental Health Action Committee, to us, we'd love to have you, because we're super passionate about environmental health. So nobody ran for office last year. That was really strange. So anyway, stop sharing. I will stop talking. And I don't know, is there opportunities for questions? I don't know. I wasn't quite sure how y'all wanted to run this part.
Yeah, so we did get one question in the Q&A, and William, one of the attendees, is asking for more PTK information. If you could expand on that a little bit, I think they'd appreciate it.
So we have a specific scholarship with PTK. Let me pull some of that information up right now. I wonder if it's online. If not, what I'll make sure to do is I'll send it over to the team over with PreMed CC, and if it's okay, if you guys would be willing to share that out on our behalf, if that's okay. But let me see if I can pull it.
I found it.
Yeah, so it's a scholarship. It's a $5,000 scholarship, which is really awesome. There's a lot of different eligibility here. I can actually share the screen if that's helpful.
I posted it.
You're even better than me. I love it. Thank you so much.
No, I just know how to use Google.
There you go. Faster fingers than me. I love it. So this is a really cool opportunity. And basically what also happens is that you'll be able to meet us at the PTK conference. And so we'll be there at PTK. We usually tape on, it's usually a great time. And then also you guys would be able to come, that individual would be able to come and get recognized at our award ceremony at our convention. So highly recommend doing that. And I will also share, we're actually working with PTKs to take our relationship to another level. So we just submitted a grant to hopefully be able to work with really specifically with PTK because we recognize that there is such an opportunity to help community college students get into medical school, and we're super excited. And so what we're developing is actually a whole pathway program for community college students that help you once you, I think it's in your last year of community college, and then through your transition into a 4-year college, if that's something that you're interested in, and then through your transition to medical school. So we're working on, hopefully, that's kind of just some secret news. Again, I think that's all my secrets. But some kind of secret news that hopefully we'll be able to share in the future. So yes, questions that we can answer. And in the meantime, I'll type my email in the chat. And then I will also put some discount codes. Now, I will say, Zena, you could also put your code if you wanted to too. So you can choose either code. They're the same discount. I say each of our leaders actually has a separate code. We're in kind of a competition with each other. So if you want to put your code, that's totally fine. But so basically, we have like fun little things that we do within the national leadership. And so it's one of those things, like if more people sign up using your code, you get more prizes. But that's why I was like, Zena, you can put your code, but we'll put both of our codes in, and you can kind of decide whichever. Nobody's going to be, nobody. It's all fun and games and lots of love in a lot of different spaces. So let me just make sure that piece. But yes, please reach out to me if you are interested in the institutional partnership, or if you're interested in starting a chapter, because this code will give you, as Zena put in, it'll give you 15% off a 4-year membership or $20 off of our convention registration, which is actually really good. And so if you guys want to do that, we can do that there. But if you reach out to me individually and you're like, I want to start a chapter and we're working on starting a chapter, I might be able to get you some free memberships, which would be also really cool.
Also, another thing for convention is that if you're starting a chapter and you get 5 to 10 members, you can actually do a group registration, which also brings down the price of registration. And that kind of, I feel like it might be easier when you're starting a chapter because you've got a close group. You all want to go, you all want to get out there. So also contact us if you're interested in that as well. So there's a lot of ways to get discounts on the registration. We really want you guys to be there. I went last year and I had a blast, and there's a lot of opportunities for pre-med students. I think Annelise mentioned a few of them, like the pre-health fair, as well as a bunch of exhibitors who have a lot of resources for pre-med students. And also, you just get to know other people from all around the country and all around the world. So, pretty fun.
The other thing is that this is kind of a trick too. I know that I went to an AMSA conference doing this. So since you are lobbying on the Capitol Hill, are you guys lobbying in Capitol Hill this year, lobby day?
Mhm.
Is there is a fund that each school carries for student representation fee. So since you're lobbying, you could tap into your school funds to pay. So I ended up taking like 10 people on my campus by tapping into the student lobbying fee that they collect. And I found out that like $300,000 in that account. I'm like, so there's a student. So yeah, if you go to any California community college, any university, they collect a student rep fee. And basically, if you're going to advocate on behalf of, higher education, mental health, you name it, whatever you're passionate about, go lobby about that. The other thing you could do is look through Jefferson, if see any bills that are coming up next year with the new Congress, and you could say, oh, I'm going to lobby for expansion of Cal grants, or not Pell grants, or things like that. And basically, you could tap into that money and get a free trip to DC. So
Oh, that's a major. Is that only California or is that any of the
I
community
think I think
colleges?
I think every school collects student rep fees. And so if you're doing a lobby
That,
day, you could, yeah. I remember I organized also a lobby day in California where pretty much we had every medical student in medical school show up, and pretty much everybody got the trip covered from their schools. So it's California, but I know like most states do cover a student rep fee.
interesting, because we usually are able to tell like students, because usually schools in general have like travel funds like for like research or those kinds of things. But for
That's
advocacy, I
medical
didn't
schools,
actually.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, medical schools have that. Undergraduate schools don't have that unless you're like in some sort of special program that's funded through NSF or NIH or something like that. But for advocacy, yeah, there's a lot of schools collect money for advocacy. I mean,
Well, this is excellent. Yep. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, my thing is that I think all universities and colleges should gather and start a super PAC, and that's that's a whole different subject. But yeah, student rep fees, representation
That's
fees.
See, we continue to learn. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's
So,
free money. It's you pay for that. So it's not like you're not like, taking any money. It's basically they collect that money and
yeah,
they let it sit there, and then you find out that, oh, student government is throwing parties for themselves. And it's like, really?
that's true.
You guys spend 5 grand on a award ceremony? It's like, what do you guys do? Like collect money to throw a party to pat yourselves on the back? Like, nope.
Let's put it to good use. No, that's super helpful. So everyone, tap in, tap in. That's awesome. Okay. Yes. Are there other questions that we can answer? And we can also open the floor. Like if you want to ask about like medical school or like those kinds of things or like our experience with AMSA, happy to answer that too.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea to open up the floor a little bit. I'm not seeing any more questions come in through the Q&A, but I'm sure everyone would love and be interested to hear about your experience with AMSA and also in medical school. And Zena, like just your experience as like being a leader, like at the national level and how that happened, because that's really cool.
All I'm saying
Awesome.
it the only thing that I would say for you guys is that you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know any medical students, anything of like that. Going to the convention, like you literally could spit and hit a medical student. So I don't know. You know, you can't just, you kind of have to go where medical students are. So if they're at this major convention, probably it's a good, and this is April, so you have plenty of time to plan ahead and get to meet people from across the country. So I don't know. I'm just adding that, but that's just me.
Oh, absolutely. I will say as a former medical student, we are there and we are well represented. So if that is something that you want to talk to a medical student, you absolutely can. And then also, yeah, if Zena, you wanted to kind of touch base about your experience in national, but yeah, also happy to talk about my experience as a medical student too.
Yeah, just on that note, real quick, medical students, every single one that I've met through AMSA are extremely kind, so smart. Everyone wants to help you succeed, which I love about AMSA. Medical school is obviously very hard and it's a long time, big commitment. And yet every single medical student that I've met has been so willing to help me, whether it's with MCAT preparation, looking over applications, and just general advice. Every single person I met, and it was through the convention actually, has been really kind. So I definitely recommend connecting to those medical students and even physicians that are affiliated with AMSA. And then in terms of how I got involved, my university, the University of South Florida, actually has a pretty big pre-medical chapter, PAMSA. So I went to a few of their events in my undergrad years. I knew what AMSA was, didn't really know how to get involved. I kind of knew, it's a big thing. And then Tyra Lee, who was the previous pre-medical trustee, I actually met her in one of my classes, and she is a huge advocate, so passionate about AMSA and all of these advocacy things that we're doing. And she pulled me right in. So she got my attention and I joined National actually, ironically, as the medical education advocacy coordinator. I know Annelise was saying that's a bit harder for pre-med students to get involved in, but it was something I was interested in. And so I served in that role for a few months before pre-medical trustee came my way and I said, hey, I want to represent the voices of pre-med students through AMSA because, as Annalise was saying, there's a lot of medical students at AMSA, but also the next generation goes beyond just current medical students. It's a huge pipeline, so you got to start where you can, and that starts right there at pre-med students.
Awesome. Okay. I guess, all right, somebody either, or maybe Edith, direct me a little bit of like what would be most helpful for me to share from a medical student perspective, or like what what are things that could be helpful for me to talk about? So I could probably talk forever. So you steer me.
Okay, I guess something that I'm curious about because I've heard, being a medical student, you're super busy. So how did you balance your education with your extracurriculars? Because you were very actively involved on campus, and what was that like? And did you have to like set time aside, or was your school curriculum pretty flexible?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question in terms of the kind of time management of pieces. So I will add, so I started I started medical school in the middle of the pandemic. So the balance was more so just like being home and continuing to be home kind of space of things. But actually, that's actually in a real way why I got involved with AMSA because I was going stir crazy in my house and I had moved to Ohio by myself. And I was like, I need friends. That's kind of how I got involved with AMSA. And I think the balance with medical school, and if I could give advice in terms of what is helpful to develop now as a pre-med to help you with medical school, is one to recognize that there's a most of the learning happens outside of the classroom. My school was unique in that actually class was mandatory. That's actually not the case for a lot of medical schools, but it's also really easy to get behind if you're not like in classes to do that. So you have to do a lot of self-discipline and being willing to learn on your own because like it's just not enough to be able to be in class and do that. So I think the balance for me, like to your question, Edith, was to be able to kind of just make sure that I was planning time for myself. Because I think there's also that feeling, especially in medical school, that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to take time for myself, but I also should be studying. So there's that kind of really interesting piece of not only like making sure that you actually relax, because like again, at the end of the day, you're studying to save your patients, even though it's kind of hard to take yourself out of that student mindset sometimes and be like, I'm just trying to pass my test. But like once you actually go to the spot of like you are needing to study to take care of people, it's a little bit different. The pressure though is a little bit more so because then you feel guilty because you're like, oh my God, if I don't ace this, then maybe somebody will die. You will learn it. You just trust the curricular process. It happens. And then at some point, once you get, so the first 2 years of medical school, the preclinical years, those are kind of like souped up college, so to speak. And so it's just kind of like things that you've probably learned, like things like immunology or biochemistry, anatomy, those kinds of things are happening again. So it's kind of like, the transition from high school to college, where like you probably took high school bio and then you probably took college bio, and it wasn't really that different. It was just faster. So that's kind of like what like the first 2 years of med school are like. The second 2 years of med school, you're balancing both of the studying, but also being in the hospital. And so that becomes a little bit harder because you're working a full day and then you have to go home and study. So that part's a little bit harder. But you learn how to build the supports around you. Or sometimes you're studying for classes, but you're also studying for your board exams. So it's a lot of studying. So you end up learning, and I'm sure all of you as pre-meds already start to know a little bit about the kind of sacrifice you have to make a little bit. But there's still plenty of time for you to like have fun and do things. So like obviously I did a whole bunch with AMSA. I'm applying radiology, super passionate about radiology. I was balancing research and like doing a like nonprofit and those kinds of things. So I think it's more so about if you really want to prioritize yourself and prioritize what makes you you and happy, that's how I would approach medical school. Because like the people who are just like, I need to like die hard and get like a 90% on every single one of my tests and above, doesn't necessarily just, what I will also say is the grades in preclinical doesn't always translate to how you perform in your rounds and with patients. So like I can also be super candid. I'm not the best test taker. Like that is not my forte, but I'm really good with bringing my clinical knowledge with my patients and building that clinical decision-making skills. And so that's also super valued, even in residency applications as well. So it's not just how well can you take a test, it's how well can you take the knowledge that you learn and apply it when you're dealing with your patients, and how well can you interact with other people, how comfortable can you make people feel. So by the time you hit your third and fourth year, it ends up being a little bit different. So I kind of got a little bit away from your question, but like those kind of pieces are super helpful. Things that I didn't know when I was a pre-med, to be like, oh, these are skills that are super important as a physician.
Thank you. That was like very beautifully detailed and very helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there other things that I could talk about that would be helpful? I know we have a little bit more time.
You did mention this, but what has applying to residency been like? I know as pre-meds, I feel like we're very much focused on getting into med school, taking the MCAT, but what happens after?
That's such a good question. And that's actually a really good question because it's kind of hard because like you as a pre-med, you're so focused in getting into medical school that you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So it's like that all again for residency. But the hard part is that you don't know unless you're like exactly what you want to do going into medical school, you don't really know what you're applying for. And so in each of the specialties have different expectations. So like, for example, if you want to be a surgeon, there's going to be probably more of an emphasis in research. If you want to be like a family practice doctor, there's probably going to be more emphasis in community service and volunteering. So it kind of depends. And what my dean liked to say is that the wand chooses the wizard. I'm probably revealing my hand too hard as a millennial because I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. But basically, it kind of is like that. So your specialty ends up kind of becoming like you find your people and find kind of what resonates and what kind of medicine. So I think as a medical student, you end up kind of going through a couple of decision trees. So the first thing you kind of decide is like, do I want to be a medical doctor or do I want to be a like a surgeon? And so once you kind of have an idea if you want to go medicine or surgery, then you start going into things like, what kind of patients do I want to work with? So do I want to be working primarily with adults or really old adults? Do I want to be working with kids? Do I want to be working with like women? So like there's like so there's like a lot of different kind of spaces within medicine, or like is there a certain part of the body that I really want to focus on? So there's those kinds of pieces. Another thing that you end up deciding is where do you want to practice? So do you want to be somebody who's based in a hospital? Or would you rather be based in like a clinic, like sometimes like when you're like a PCP and you go and like get, your regular checkups. So like you make those kind of decision points as you go through it. A lot of times people don't make their decisions until third year when you start your rotations because you don't really know. However, I will say that if you are interested in a highly competitive specialty, so highly competitive specialties are like surgery is a pretty hard specialty, especially orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, vascular surgery. Those are really hard to get into. Other highly sought out specialties are like radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesia, dermatology. So all of those, it's really worth exploring. Actually, that's a really good piece of advice is if you know that you might be interested in one of those specialties, start exploring that now. Maybe try to find a physician in one of those specialties to shadow, just try to learn a little bit more about the field, maybe get involved with research with a doctor in that kind of specialty, because those with how competitive those are, you really want to start building your CV arguably before medical school, but also within your first year of medical school. Because like if you want to be like an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon, which are probably the most hardest specialties to get into, not a bad thing. Love that. Please do it. But like they have like crazy CVs. They have like a lot of research. They have to be the top of the classes. Like they have to be like all of those things. And so that's not to say that you can't do it. And by all means do it, but because you all are thinking about this as pre-meds, you're already ahead of the curve. If you're thinking about like orthopedic surgery and you're trying to do that as a third year medical student, you're way too late and you'll probably have to take gap years to like do that to apply. And so that's actually a really good piece. And I would say what you all could do right now is just explore the different specialties and see what you might be interested in. It's going to be hard for you to really figure out exactly what you're interested in, but at least having some idea is going to already set you ahead of the curve. And if you're able to learn a little bit about research, you might hate research, and that's okay. But if you can learn a little bit about it, that will also set you ahead of the curve so that you're not in medical school and you're like, why is everybody caring about research or, community service or those kinds of things. So it's residency applications is like medical school applications. And you also still have to take, like you guys take the MCAT, we take if you're an MD, you take the USMLEs. If you're a DO, you take the POMLEXs. Both horrifying exams. The horrifying exams don't stop. I'm so sorry. We get worse. but so those matter, letters of rank, it's kind of all very, very similar. That's the better thing about residency applications, though, is that you don't have to do the secondaries like you do for med school. So in med school, secondaries, basically every single school has like at least like 3 to 5 different essays that you have to write in addition to your common essay. That was a really painful process, but you can do it, and we can support you if you need any help with that. Cool. I actually see a really quick question here. Oh, pre-vet student. That's nice. That's super cool. So, good question. So for pre-vet, I will say that, so it can be, so we're not necessarily like for like pre-vet or like dental or even nursing, like I think that there can be a lot of opportunities that in terms of our leadership development courses and like learning about medicine from different perspectives that I think would be super awesome. And I can't see that a vet school wouldn't look at it and be like, that's a really great opportunity to learn. I will say that most of I would say the majority of our programming is designed for people who are practicing I guess what we say, human medicine. But I think that there's, especially at the pre-med, like in the like health stage, there's a lot of really, really excellent skills that can be translated. So like, for example, like suturing, we do suturing clinics at our convention. You could really use that because you're still going to have to know how to suture or like use an ultrasound as a veterinarian. So I think that's up to you in terms of like if you think like if I'm not familiar with the vet space and if they have like student organizations like this. But I would say we would more than love to have you. I just want to make sure that it is still, in the space. And I think there is. I think that there's a lot of things that you can get involved with that will help you still take your leadership to the next level. Thanks for asking.
We did a thing for pre-vet. Oops, sorry. We did a pre-vet event last week, and I think it's on our YouTube page. And I think we'll have UC Davis Vet School come again in the spring and do 2 sessions that we get their dean and also their admission person. So make sure you check out our social media and stuff. But yeah, we did a pre-vet event last weekend. So
That's cool. UMed CC does it all. We love to see it.
but I could just say that all your classes, pretty much you're more likely to be next to pre-med students and pre-pharmacy students and pre-dental students. So all the classes are pretty much the same. So we could all commiserate together.
It is a commiseration. I wish I could say it gets easier, but I think it gets different. It's a different kind of hard at each stage. So at least though at residency, at least you get paid at some point. So we'll see. So I actually thought I wasn't sure if we end at 9. I'm happy to stay around and answer any other questions, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time if we are to time. So you guys tell me what would be most helpful.
I actually have a question, if you don't mind me asking. So at my community college before I transferred, they were trying to build up the AMSA chapter, because they originally had it before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, it was a lot harder. So they wanted to figure out ways to like help fund. So like, what are some ideas that you have done in the past to do that?
Good question. I'm going to pitch it to Zena for the pre-med side of things, and then I can kind of talk about what I did for med student.
Yeah, so I guess the first part with that is with an inactive chapter. It's essentially kind of like starting new, especially if it depends on how long it's been inactive and sort of what inactive means, whether that means like not really any programming or there's just sort of no officers or whatnot. In terms of funding, like I said earlier, National AMSA provides like recruitment kits and a lot of resources that are useful for getting membership engagement. But ultimately, a lot, and Annalise, correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of the chapter fundraise or I guess money comes from their own fundraising and their local dues. So how a chapter wants to do that is ultimately up to them. On the national side, we can help you with those fundraising events and help guide you through them, but I don't think we have like a fund that we just can give, if I'm right, Annalise?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So in terms of like funding for events and that kind of thing, I can speak. So interestingly enough, I wasn't involved with AMSA in undergrad because I didn't know it existed. So I was a psych major in college, and so I got really involved with like the psychology clubs. And basically, what I did was like student government often has a lot of money. So basically, if you go onto like the Student Gov's website and like look at like funding for schools, like that's how we always funded our events in college. I went to Arizona State, so I went to a really big school, but for like I would imagine it's kind of similar for community colleges as well. But like for the funding for that, for us at least for our events, like that's when like we ended up putting on like a whole like research conference. So that was when we ended up getting a lot. But most of our smaller events, like for catering or those kinds of things, it ended up being a lot like easier and cheaper. So like I would just look with your SGA and kind of see if there's opportunities for there, because usually that they have money set aside for organizations and chapters. And actually, actually similarly, that was actually how we did it for medical school as well. So medical school, we have like I don't know if it's actually called an SGA, so to speak, but we do have kind of like a central group in which we could apply for funding. But mostly, again, that's mostly for like catering, because like reserving like meeting space and those kinds of things was pretty easy, and that was pretty free at the different schools, so we were able to do that. And then a lot of it is also down to like the creative planning for what your events were. So like one of my favorite events that we planned in college was oh gosh, it was called a Halloween hunt, and basically it was like a scavenger hunt through our campus at night, and everybody dressed up, and like it was like I think one year was a photo scavenger hunt, another one it was like you had to go and find the like executive board, and they gave you like riddles and stuff, and you had to like solve it. It was actually a lot of fun. Um, so I have a lot of really random fun ideas. So if anybody ever needs, like, if you're interested in starting a chapter and you're like, I would love to like learn a little bit more, that's usually helpful. And what I will say is that the more people who come to your events, the more funding you can apply for, at least because they're like, oh, people are doing things. That's cool. So those are some quick tips. Oh, I will say, actually, side note, sorry, rewind. We do actually have some funded events through AMSA, through our reproductive health project. And so, like, if you want to host like movie screenings for some of the repro like movies that we have, or if you want to like, so we have like a manual vacuum assist workshop. So if you guys want to learn how to do manual vacuum assist through like, we use like papayas and dragon fruit to like simulate the uterus kind of situation. But if you want to learn that clinical skill, we have funding for that. We have, yeah, if you want to design like a repro related event, we have actually a lot of money for that. We also have opportunities for events through our partners. So we have a lot of these things called lunch and learns. And so if you're interested in working with one of our partners and you want like a fully funded lunch, and then they can kind of talk to you about the opportunities for your chapter, we also have those. So we don't have like specific funding, but we have like opportunities that you can like do and host at your chapter to fund, if that makes sense. Cool. This is super fun. And thank you so much for having us. Like this is super awesome. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to reach out to either Zena or I, or if there's like quick burning questions right now, again, I'm happy to stay a little bit after and just kind of gab and talk.
Ask your question, or for your ever hold your peace.
You've spoken. But all of that is to say, well, go ahead, please.
No, I just can say we could access, this is for your session, so any questions you have, please ask before we let our speakers go, because they're on the Eastern Standard Time. It's almost like what, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
It is 9 p.m. for me in the East Coast, but I am getting to try out my new ring light for this, so it probably looks like it is at 9 p.m. for me. So it's prep for my residency interview, so I was trying to see if it would work. It looks okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the vote of confidence.
I think for your residency interview, you should have a big AMSA flag behind you.
Great idea.
That's a joke.
I come in with the AMSA logo. I don't usually have like a virtual background like you all have for pre-med CC. It looks great, by the way. But yeah, I should maybe just do that. That would be great.
Yeah, it's so funny because two of the doctors that I work with are like, I think one of them was the AMSA president a couple years, like many years ago, and so yeah, so it's the you never know what do they call themselves, the people that were part of AMSA. They have an acronym. Yeah, oats.
Old AMSA type. Was what we like to call our grads. Who do you work with?
This is my old job. It was Dr. Levitz. Like he was an AMSA president in the 70s.
Wow.
Like way before all of us were born. like he's retired now, but he and then I know another one, but I don't think he was the president, but he was involved with AMSA. All right, well, since there's no more questions, we're gonna end our session.